Absolutely. Well, thanks, Greg, for having me, and thank you everyone for joining in. So great to meet you all. Yeah. So a little bit of background. So just to keep your minds from wandering too much while I'm talking tonight, some people might start wondering where my accent's from. So I can tell you that I was born in Jasper, Alberta, and raised in Kelowna, BC. But 1978, I graduated from high school and left for Europe on a gap year. And I'm the kind of person that likes to try to make the most of my opportunities. So I extended my gap year into 4 decades. So I was away for a while. Had to come back and shut my mom up because she was complaining that I left and never came back. So we moved back here in 2018. But while I was away, I had a really amazing career, basement to boardroom, basically at a hotel company. And it was amazing mostly because they didn't actually want to hire me in the first place. I had dropped out of university and wanted to work in travel. And so I applied for this job as a security guard in a hotel, only because the hotel was owned by an airline. And the security manager that interviewed me looked at me and looked at my resume and said, you're too old, you're too educated, and you have too many opinions for this job. But to my good fortune, the only other person that applied didn't accept the job offer. So they were kind of stuck with me. And I ended up staying with that company that grew from 25 regional hotels in Scandinavia into what, through a series of all kinds of different things, ended up becoming the Radisson Hotel Group. And I just kind of floated along with them. And when I left in 2018, I was their VP of Global Safety and Security. So that's kind of my career. I'll get back to why I'm interested in things like meaningful tourism because it doesn't always rhyme with with my work background. But while I was working, I always told people that yes, my job is security, but my business is hospitality. So we were always really focused on the fact that we weren't just security people working in hotels. We were in the hotel business, and our job was security, just like a housekeeper's job is keep things clean, and front desk people are paid to smile at people and check them in and out. We were there to help keep them safe and secure. So most of what I'm going to talk about today, or at least the start of what I'm going to talk about today, is partly based on an article I wrote in Substack even before meaningful tourism was a thing. So I'm just posting the link in the chat for you. You can go in and read it. It might prompt you to subscribe or pledge or do something like that. But all my stuff on Substack is free, so you don't need to do anything. You can just go in and read it. But before we begin, I'm also going to just share a slide here and basically ask a question. What do you think the biggest challenge today facing hospitality is? So you can just put stuff in the chat if you want, or uh, or you can shout it out. You can do whatever you want, basically. But yeah, things like staff inclusion, yeah, over tourism. You can cheat if you want, Janet. If I was you, I'd cheat. So why not? But yeah, so for me, the biggest challenge is basically uncertainty, right? So doesn't matter what. It's actually uncertainty, and especially today, we like to plan in ways that pretend we know what's going to happen. We live like we almost know what's going to happen, or that we expect certain things to happen. We hope that certain things will happen, but we never really know, right? I can tell you that if I knew, I wouldn't have started not one but two hospitality consulting companies a month before the pandemic broke out, right? And just kind of obliterated the whole global market, which is why I had to start writing stuff just to have something to do. But if we think about it, And if you look at a lot of what you see online on Instagram or from marketers and self-help gurus, they kind of pretend as well that we know what's going to happen. We know what's best for, especially know we know what's best with other people. But if anybody remembers what Maslow's hierarchy of needs is, if we look at the foundation of that, it's shelter, safety, and security. So basically, it's the hospitality industry. And even though TikTokers and marketing gurus, they spend their time up on the top of the pyramid, dancing around, and they sometimes behave at least like they forget what is really, the foundation that has to be there for them to be able to do what they want to do. And so uncertainty is always my one word answer to that kind of a question. We, as I said, we think, we plan, we behave like we know things, but we don't. And especially in today's world, when it seems like everything is changing really, really fast with AI and technology changing like minute by minute. Today was like the Apple day for the release of whatever the next version of the iPhone is going to be. But humans don't change like technology changes. Humans evolve, right? And so for us, that foundation of shelter, safety, and security is still always going to be there. If we move on to sustainability, it's had a lot of names up through the years, right? We started our environmental program at the company I worked for in 1989. If you look at the program they have today, I'd say it's evolving like a human. It almost hasn't changed. They've added a couple of bits and pieces. They've moved the goalposts a bit for what they want to achieve, but they're still looking at the same kinds of things. And sustainability is also marketed as saving the planet. But in reality, a lot of what we see in sustainability is just cost savings. If it wasn't saving money for the companies that were doing it, they wouldn't be doing it. But they market it as save the planet because that makes everybody feel good. And the planet doesn't need to be saved. If we wipe out all life on the planet because of the way we behave and the way we do things, the planet's still going to be here. It's just going to be living up to its name of third rock from the sun. So I always I look at a lot of sustainability programs as what I discovered when I first went into management in safety and security, that almost all the fire drills ended up in a parking lot. And to me, that's what sustainability is kind of like. You do all the drills, you do all the fancy marketing stuff, and then you go back to normal. But for us in fire drills, when we start to look at it, what happens if the fire chief, well, if the hotel burns down? You can't go back inside. What do you do then, right? So we're not looking at sustainability as something truly sustainable in the long term. We're just looking at it as a short-term feel-good thing. Another thing that I kind of complain about, I'm a good complainer actually, is that people, they keep, we heard it a lot during the pandemic. I heard a guy in agriculture say it just the other day. He said, all we want is for normal. We just want a normal year. And I said, well, reality is the only normal you're ever going to get. It's not going to be the normal. Normal is just a statistic. So that reality is what you actually have to live with. I also look at sustainability programs and they're all about competitive advantage. So we want to be more sustainable than the neighbor because then we can market stuff and everybody will come and stay with us instead of the neighbor. But should we really compete on who's ruining the planet and our ways of life the least? Or should we find ways to work that go beyond just looking at being better than our neighbors? And so that kind of brings us to meaningful tourism. And meaningful tourism was invented by Professor Dr. Wolfgang Georg Arlt. I've known him probably for about, I checked the other day and it scared me. It was almost 20 years. We spoke at at the same, it was actually a real estate investment event, I think in Munich or Stuttgart. But we were on different panels, and I just met him in the green room, kind of, and we kept in touch ever since. And he was known back then as the leading expert in the world on outbound tourism from China. So sustainability, meaningful tourism isn't really something he's focused on through his academic and business career until probably the last 5, 10 years. He started looking at stuff like this before the pandemic when over tourism started to become a thing. Um, but it really took shape in the first couple of years after the pandemic when he saw that we didn't really learn anything from the pandemic. Everybody just kind of went back to what we were doing before the pandemic as fast as we could. That's what we wanted to do. And he said, well, this isn't going to work in the long run. Uh, we need to look at finding ways to develop tourism that can benefit every stakeholder and where every stakeholder group has some kind of satisfaction uh, from tourism. And so he defined the stakeholders here as these were like the 6 groups of stakeholders. And if we look at them, sometimes we can see that uh, these are groups that can be in conflict with each other. They can be viewed as barriers or competitors to each other. Industry will always tell you that government has too many regulations and too much taxation and things like that. Workers look at hospitality today as if it's, a place where you can get a low-paying job while you're educating yourself to get a real job. And even my mom did that. I worked for the hotels for 30 years. She didn't think I had a real job until I got business cards. Uh, and so that's kind of the view we have of it. Uh, Locals, when I was teaching here in Kelowna at Okanagan College, this local student said we feel like second-class citizens. And I think we see that in a lot of popular destinations around the world as well, that locals don't really feel, if they're not working in the tourism industry, they don't feel that it's benefiting them. And of course, the environment's been trying to give us signals for years and years, but we haven't been listening. And so now it's kind of shouting from the rooftops by, burning down the forests and smoking out our cities, and we have atmospheric rivers, and it's literally burning before our eyes. And slowly people are maybe starting to wake up. So what Wolfgang did was he developed a training program called the Meaningful Tourism Transformational Game Workshop. So you should find an easier name to market for it. But it's basically set up for DMOs and others that have interest within the tourism, governments or companies that have interest within tourism, to try to give them a more holistic view of what they could and should be maybe looking at when it comes to long-term sustainability, not only of the environment, but of their businesses and in general of our ways of life on the planet. So the way it works is you get a group together between 12 and 30 people, preferably divisible by 6, so that you can have equal group numbers in each group. And each group or each people are kind of placed into one of the 6 groups. So you could have a marketing executive that's in a group, and we develop personas for each group as well based on the location. And so you could have a marketing executive that was, a local retired person that doesn't have any direct involvement with tourism. You could have a CFO who's focused on cost, trying to find ways that trying to be a housekeeper in a low-paid job or something like that. And you could have a CEO who has huge expansion plans for his company, who is the environment that's being, you know, challenged by the encroaching tourism industry. And so what happens is, after a little introduction, we put the groups in separate, they go their separate ways, and they have to try to figure out, okay, if we were this person, and the environment also has a persona, but if we were this persona, what benefits could tourists bring to us, and how could we find satisfaction from tourism? And they have to try to put together that what their challenges are, what their opportunities are, and then they have to create a pitch that they will make to the wider group later. And after they've all made their pitches to the wider group, the whole group comes together and they have to try to figure out, where is the common ground here? What could we do that would benefit locals, businesses, governments, employees, and the environment? Um, and once they've done that, they have to make a plan. And when they make the plan, they have to implement it and start measuring the KPIs that they've developed as well. So the whole idea is that it's trying to give people that are in or in some way impacted by the industry, trying to give them a more holistic view where they can use empathy, if they have any, to try to understand the interests of the other stakeholders and then find ways to come together to do that. And for me, when I first was approached by Wolfgang about this, um, it was music to my ears because I built my whole career on collaboration. We had collaboration with other hotel groups, with governments, and NGOs and things, that because we felt that safety and security was non-competitive. And my belief is that any kind of sustainability, but pretty much everything we do, can benefit as much or more from collaboration as from just going head to head and trying to be better than the other guy. Um, so I was really, thrilled when Wolfgang said, "Well, can you take this on in Canada?" So I said, "Yes, of course." And then I tried to figure out what it was all about. But so far, Asia Pacific, maybe surprisingly, maybe not, is really leading the way. So this year, at their annual general meeting, PATA, the Pacific Asia Travel Association, launched a new mission statement, which is building a meaningful tourism economy. So they're really putting this to the forefront and trying to find ways to move away from the traditional views of sustainability and move to something that is much more not only focused on, saving the planet, but it's focused on making things better for everyone and finding ways to bring more people together to do it. I believe that Canada is really well placed to embrace something like this because we've always been and still are out in the world. We're viewed as a place with, wide open spaces, but also with a huge focus on taking care of the environment. A lot of environmental groups and environmental focus has grown out from Canada. We also really lead the world in what I call contemporary indigenous tourism. And I say contemporary as opposed to like what a lot of indigenous tourism has been and what it still is in many places in the world, where it's focused on, what the colonizers found when they came, right? It's like the old-fashioned historical stuff. Whereas here in Canada, we've taken steps way ahead of most of the rest of the world towards looking at indigenous tourism from a contemporary standpoint. And I think that also is something that really feeds well uh, into meaningful tourism. So that's just kind of the little bit of an introduction that I had to this for you tonight. Um, I, I'd like to ask you as well, what do you think is next? So, uh, does any of what I've said resonate with you? What challenges would you see? What opportunities do you see with something like this? And just how does it make you feel when you think of sustainability as something other than, saving money because you're not doing laundry as much or something like that, right? Which is, I'm sorry, but that's still what the hotel industry is doing, and that's the industry I know the best. So, you can throw your thoughts up in the chat, or we can take it offline and discuss it later. I'll put my contact details up here as well. Always happy to chat with people about these things, but any questions that you have for me now, fire away. And yeah, so that,
Okay. I have a question. One or a couple comments. One is if you're on LinkedIn, you can reach out to Paul on there. I'm sure he'd like to establish some contacts in that respect. So you could always approach Paul through LinkedIn. He's got a very active profile. He's on there quite a bit interacting with all his colleagues from around the world. And secondly, if you're interested to learn more about Dr. Wolfgang, he's also on LinkedIn. I also follow his posts, and both gentlemen are very knowledgeable in their fields, and I've learned a lot off of them just off reading their LinkedIn posts, which hence why I reached out to Paul to see if we could establish a beyond LinkedIn connection so we could share a lot more information. One question I have, Paul, is you mentioned locals not benefiting from tourism. This is a big thing in my business is when we talk to small communities is a lot of pushback where they don't want to have travelers. They like the old way. They like having it the lake to themselves. They like having, but then again, they don't like paying high taxes, and they don't like it when their stores leave, and they don't like it when the big box comes in, and they don't like it when we go shop at Kelowna. Um, so you got all, it's like a double-edged sword. What's your take on that, and how do you
that
educate?
Yeah, and I think, from both sides, both the local side and from the industry side, a lot of the problem is we just don't uh, see the other points of view, right? So a lot of locals, even like here in Kelowna, where let's face it, the province is investing $50 million in a food, wine, tourism building at Okanagan College. Um, Locals don't see the benefit, or they don't think they see the benefit, but the infrastructure, the change that comes with those kind of things, the money that, like this weekend, we're hosting the Canadian Country Music Awards.
Yeah, I saw that.
It's supposed to inject the economy with $11 million. Okay, that's not going to end up in like my pocket. And so I think that's kind of the disconnect is people don't see that this is funding infrastructure upgrades that everyone benefits from. And the other way around, I think, as industry, we really don't look at the locals as being part of the market we're trying to attract, right? So when I lived in Copenhagen, I we had my apartment was like 10 minutes walk from the hotel where I had my office. And it was a big hotel of 550 rooms. They had a casino, three or four restaurants, all this kind of stuff. Um, and there was new office buildings going up right beside our hotel as well. It was an area that was in transition to become more gentrified and more developed. And so I asked our food and beverage people, like, why don't we create, uh, offers for the people that are going to be working in those office buildings, the people that like there's 5,000 people that live in the apartment buildings over there. Why don't, and they were like, they just looked at me like I was a stupid security guy, right? Which I probably was. But their answer was because we're an international hotel, right? So they didn't look at the locals as being part of the market at all.
Mhm.
It's a little bit like that here too. When we moved here, I asked a director of sales at a hotel, I asked, why don't we try to attract more international tourism? And And the answer was because we don't need it. We're fine with Calgary and Vancouver as our feeder markets and a little bit more others from, other parts of North America and BC and Alberta mainly.
Mhm.
And it's just this kind of narrow-mindedness that kind of is prevalent in the industry a lot of places. You talk about the local guy doesn't want change. You think the industry does? They don't
Yeah.
want it either, right?
No,
So
they don't.
it's been
I
very,
agree.
very stagnant.
Yeah. Uh, Janet, I don't know if you can see the chat there,
Yeah, I
Paul,
can
but
I can see that
Janet
question.
has
Yeah.
two good questions there if you don't mind addressing those.
Yeah. So if you ask Dr. Wolfgang, who's like really put the academic thought into to this, he's like sustainable tourism. Sustainability is a word that's just been overused, and it's now the meaning of it is so washed out, or greenwashed out, some people would say, but that it just it doesn't really mean anything to anybody. Nobody knows what you're talking about if you talk about sustainability. Regenerative tourism as well, but it's also something that sounds to people like it's only focused on certain things. And so he hasn't been able to find anything that really encompasses the wholeness of looking at it from all these different stakeholder perspectives. So the biggest difference between, I'd say, sustainable, responsible business, regenerative tourism, all the names that we've been giving this over the years, is that meaningful tourism takes a much broader perspective and it's more focused on the positive than the negative. So sustainability is focused on let's not use up as much of our planet as we're doing already. Regenerative is a little bit in the same vein, right? Where we're trying to, uh, you know, recycle energy or recreate things. Whereas meaningful tourism, it accepts that there will be trade-offs, uh, but the trade-offs will have benefits, maybe in the longer term that are not just trying to create short-term marketing wins, which a lot of the other stuff, let's face it, that's what it's all about.
Mhm. What do you see as the difference between, or sorry, um, what do you think our role as adventure seeker influencers across Canada? How can we better promote meaningful tourism? And that's a question from Janet.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I saw that one as well. Um, so I think for anybody who's traveling a lot, so as adventure seekers or business, even business travelers can do this, is to be more aware. And I think, visitors are also one of the stakeholder groups. What we have to do with travelers, with visitors, is to have them play a role in uh, ensuring that benefits are and and satisfaction comes to the places that they travel to. So a lot of our tourism now is focused on the winners usually are the traveler and the industry, and a lot of industry is just kind of it's all franchise. So a lot of the money and benefits are leaving the is leaving the local economy. So just the choices that you make of, where to stay, where to shop, where to eat, the questions that you ask when you're out, talking to tourism people in the different localities, what are they doing? How are they working to make sure that they are benefiting not only their own businesses, but the local economies as well. And we see that as a city like Kelowna, if you look at all the hotels and things here, there's almost nothing that's not some big brand franchise name on it. And that's really unfortunate because we take a lot of the control, we take a lot of the money that could have stayed in the local economy and we send it somewhere else. So asking those kind of questions and making choices. So there's another person that you might want to follow. He writes a blog called Couchfish. I don't have a link to it right away, but his name is Stuart McDonald. He's also really active on LinkedIn. But he's lived in Bali for, I don't know, 25, 30 years, and he made his living writing uh, travel guides, basically, back in the good old days. Uh, but he's super focused on uh, tourism that benefits local economies. And he just got his master's degree in sustainability or something like that, but from a university in Leeds in the UK. So he traveled from Bali to Leeds overland, and the whole way he tried to take every single step uh, in a way that would benefit the local economy more than some global business. And he's documenting everything. He's probably going to write a book, I guess, but he just wrote a blog about a week or two ago called Less Bad Travel. And the idea was you can't fix everything all at once, but you can do things that are not as harmful as what you do if you don't think. And so part of it was instead of saying, okay, I have to, book my flight, you should ask your question, how am I going to do this? How am I going to book my flight? How am I going to book my accommodation? Whatever. So that would be another good one to look at, Stuart McDonald. And his blog used to be called Travel Fish, but during the pandemic, he changed the name to Couchfish. So because he wasn't doing too much traveling. I see another question there from Janet. You're great at asking questions, Janet. I appreciate that. How do you identify legit, meaningful tourism businesses versus the greenwashing in it for the money businesses? Well, you don't really need to be a super sleuth to see when you look at how things are marketed, and especially just walking into any business that has marketed their sustainability program and spending 3 minutes asking a regular staff member or just looking around with your own eyes to see are they actually doing what they say they're doing. And so, the some of the things that are done with carbon trading and carbon offsetting and things like that, it's really hard to uh, see how that is supposed to be doing anything good. To me, it reminds me a little bit of when the recycling companies in BC were shipping all of our recycling to the Philippines or Malaysia and saying, okay, we recycled it. They didn't actually recycle it. They sent it somewhere else for it to be recycled, right? So when you're not doing what you're saying you're doing, but you're asking others kind of to do it for you. I also react to hotels that, they all have their loyalty programs now, and they want you to donate your points back that you've paid for. You paid for those points. They want you to donate them back to the company, and they will put them to good use, right? And so so on the one hand, you're paying for the points, then you're giving them back, and they're going to take the marketing credit for all the trees that they plant or whatever they do with that. And for me, those kind of things are that's not even responsible business. It's certainly not sustainability. It's and we can see some travel groups now, some segments of the market are starting to rise up and say, no, I paid for my room. I want you to clean it every day. I'm not going to help you save money on laundry costs or things like that because you're taking all the credit. I'm the one sacrificing things for it. And so, those are the kind of things that, everybody wants to pitch in, but if we don't see what those companies are actually doing themselves, other than telling the guests to change their behavior, it's not something that's going to last forever.
Yeah. Uh, Diana has a comment. First
Yeah,
of all,
I'm reading it.
okay.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Diana. Um, yeah, and to be fair, there's lots of great companies doing lots of great things, but much of what's getting done is getting lost in the noise. And so that's maybe another thing that you as adventure seekers can do is to look at companies like this and spread not only look at, okay, how do we tell the difference, but once we find the good ones, make sure that they are getting the publicity that they deserve so that more people can see that this isn't, something that can't be improved upon. So everybody has, as long as you're doing things because it feels good or it's good for marketing or it has good intentions, it's really not going to be successful in the real long run when push comes to shove. Big businesses for sure, they will always follow the money, right? And that's something that I've always talked to our sustainability people at when I was at Radisson. I said, if you can't make what you're doing profitable, you're always going to be cut out of the budget first. It was like with security, we found a way to make security profitable for the company just by changing the way that we looked at things. We moved from being a compliance and control part of the company into being, we went out to our corporate clients to ask them, okay, what do you really need here? And when we built working relationships with our biggest corporate clients, the ones that were especially focused on travel risk, um, we could just see that the number of bookings that they had in our company skyrocketed compared to how much growth there was in other business travel segments. And so just in the space of 1 year, 10 companies that we focused on, they grew their business so much that it would pay our corporate security budget for decades. And so finding different ways of doing things and making them available to everyone, share. We told our colleagues in the other hotel groups what we were doing because we wanted them to do it as well, because it made things better for everyone. And those are it's a mindset shift that has to happen. Tourism industry isn't great at mindset shifts, but I'm the kind of person that if I see something like this, that I become super passionate about it. And yeah, if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see more posts coming up as well.
Okay,